Hi everyone. Today's conversation with Beth Kromer is about plant medicine. Plant medicine as a deep trauma healer, but also as an evolutionary catalyst, helping us become more psychic, more connected. But before we dive into this conversation with Beth, I wanted to offer some context about what may actually be happening. Now, in episode 3 of this podcast, this solo narrative episodes, I talk about the field. So, about how we all have access to a glass mind or a larger informational field of consciousness all around us. I even refer to research which suggests that the brain is a filter. That's one of Bernardo Kastrup's ideas, is that the brain is a filter for a much larger consciousness. So, this is how it ties into plant medicine. Studies on plant medicine, some of you may know, like ayahuasca and psilocybin, which we talk about with Beth today, touches on just this concept. One of the most significant things that has come out of the research on plant medicine through brain imaging is the fact that these plant medicines seem to shut down the default mode network. Now, the default mode network is the part of the brain which is supporting cognitive processes like self-referential thought, autobiographical memory, social kind of cognition. So, in other words, it's the part of the brain that governs, we could say, your ego self, your personality, your sense of who you are, in that more narrow sense of me being separate from everything else. And what seems to happen with plant medicines is it takes that offline so that suddenly the filter has been removed and there's access to a larger sense of self, a larger consciousness that's connected to everything. So possibly a more true kind of experience. The other thing that happens with plant medicines is it does increase neuroplasticity. It helps your neural networks recalibrate or rewire so that you come back from the experience holding an innate, almost biological imprint of being more than you are. So, in today's interview, Beth and I are exploring how plant medicine is a deep healer of trauma in the body, helping us return to a more authentic or innate version of ourselves as consciousness. One more thing, my podcast episodes here on the Shattering Place podcast will always be free and available to the public on all of the platforms. There are no paywalls within the podcast episodes, but I do have a paid tier private Substack community called the Still Point Community, and for that community, which starts at just $10 a month, you can actually submit questions to my guests, and I will do private Q&A episodes with some of my podcast guests just for my membership community. But other than that, you can be assured that if you start an episode of my podcast, you can finish it, no problem, no paywall. Thanks for listening, everyone. Let's get started. Welcome, Beth. Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, it's completely my pleasure. Thank you.
I'm really excited to get into this. I have questions. I've read a lot of material. I'm one of those people who I've tried a bit of psilocybin, but I haven't gone on a proper journey. So I think that's a benefit because I'm not sure everyone in my audience has actually been on a journey. So it's a great opportunity to speak to people who are curious about plant medicine and what it can bring, and also those who maybe have tried it, to give them a deeper understanding from your point of view, having done so much work, not just in this space, but particularly with integration. So that's something that's really key, is how to take that into your lived experience and let that change who you are. So I'd love to begin with you just maybe, just introducing what you do, what it's all about.
Sure. So, our organization, which is not for profit, is focused on ayahuasca. That's the plant medicine. And our practitioners have studied and go to the jungle of South America to study with the Shipibo, which have been working with ayahuasca for thousands of years. And so we also get what we call the plant medicine, which is ayahuasca from that location. And we have a center in Northern California that's not for profit with a religious designation, as you said, that allows participants to come here 6 people or less with 2 practitioners, and to sit with the medicine as if they were going to the jungle. However, what we do differently, we bring, we put a lot of pre-work and small group work, and like you mentioned, integration, because the plant medicine experience can be absolutely earth rocking. It can be profound. Yeah. I mean, there's can be a lot to it, but we believe it's much more than an experience. It's how do we take what happens during ceremonies and implement it in our lives. If there's no implementation, if there's no integration, if there's no fundamental shift, it's just another experience. And we're about healing, not experiences.
Yeah, I love that. So the focus is on healing and not experience. I think that's important to say, because a lot of people will look at plant medicine as, you know, just a fun thing you do, you know, at a party, which of course, you know, that's fine. But what you're talking about is something different. You're talking about using this age-old medicine from plants that have been around for millions of years, probably, you know, rooted in an indigenous culture, which has a whole approach to it, which is really specific, really considered, and using that for healing. So maybe, yeah, what kind of healing?
So super interesting, and probably I need to step back and say our focus is primarily with ayahuasca and psilocybin, which is a magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
But and they are psychedelics for sure.
Yeah.
So people think about psychedelics, they can think about ketamine, they can think about LSD, but those are synthetic. And what we're working with is plants or fungi that have been, as you said, around for who knows how long. And the concept of the Shipibo, which are the indigenous tribe, which our ayahuasca both comes from, and also our practitioners are trained there, is it's so completely different, because once people ingest this and go through the process, it's opening up consciousness. It's opening up consciousness to the plant, and we soon see, wow, this is a sentient being. Ayahuasca, I know it can sound super crazy, but it's, at least it's for some people, that consciousness is expanded. We get to see that we're much more than just this body, this experience, this reality. And so what ayahuasca in particular, along with the methodology we have here, is it helps us release energy or trauma that's stored in our bodies. And once that happens, we can get to a state that's much more open, less guarded, less, protected, and healing comes in. So if you've ever heard the book, The Body Keeps the Score, there's so much literature and research out there that trauma, autoimmune issues.
It's held in the body. I mean, this is what's so interesting about, well, I guess particularly ayahuasca, as far as I understand, because different psychedelics have different effects. So my understanding from my research, well, a little bit of experience with mushrooms, psilocybin, is that it's more of a connecting to like a, galactic wider consciousness, whereas ayahuasca is really taking you down into your cells, down into earth, down into, I don't know, more into trauma, kind of more of a downward motion, and it more into the body. Is that right? And into those cells?
Yes, but not just that. So I think psilocybin is super interesting. I think it's a massive heart opener. It helps people see that there's so much more. It's very expansive. It can be dark, but it also can be light. For whatever reason, we have lost any ability to work with psilocybin to move energy. That has not been passed down.
Oh, really?
So super important that might have happened in the past. But the interesting thing about the Shipibo style of working with ayahuasca is they were never colonized. It's an oral language tradition. So how they sat with ayahuasca 1,000 years is how they sit now, more or less. And so what's super distinct about ayahuasca is it's very, very strong. Generally stronger than psilocybin. Its active ingredients DMT, which is considered the spirit molecule, and it combined with songs that are called ikros that the practitioner sings to you, to each participant. Is the whole design is to move energy out of you, or as we say, trauma.
Yes. And this is why ceremony is such a fundamental requirement of these deeper, healing oriented ceremonies, because it's not just about the medicine, is it? It's not just about the substance. There's like as you say, with the Shipibo, there's a whole way that it unfolds. I've in my research, I read about this. That is it called the
Ikoro.
Yeah. So the person ingests a substance, and then I understand there's a purging experience.
It could be. People always ask me about that. They're like, I hate throwing up, and that's one type of purging. But it's not like throwing up when you're sick. But we can come back to that.
Yeah. But for it, even if it's not throwing up, there's some sense in which, is that correct, that with ayahuasca, because it's coming deep into the body, into the cells, into the trauma, there's some sort of release.
Yes. So what happens with a purge? It can be shaking, it could be crying, it could be yawning, it could be throwing up, it can be having to go to the bathroom. But what's happening is whatever we have stored in our bodies somatically is getting released. And you might think, oh, this feels terrible, but it doesn't. If it's not like, oh gosh, this is so comfortable, but we can feel that which does not serve us leave. Which is utterly incredible. That's the design.
I've had purging is a very well-known part of any kind of spiritual awakening process, where you're shifting out of a body-based, ego-based identity to a more soul-aligned identity. And it's well known in literature from Eastern traditions, for example, probably in Christian mysticism as well. It was also my experience of purging, where I had stomach disturbances for a couple of months that had no medical explanation whatsoever. So I'm familiar with it, and it makes sense to me. And also, because I do somatic therapy and I work also with the body, with body work, I see people go through times when they are purging, as you say. It can be crying, it can be all kinds of things. And that's the more of the unseen. I don't know if we have a scientific explanation for it. Probably there is something connected to the medicine, but it definitely is part of a larger process. But okay, so getting back to ayahuasca, so there's you ingest it, there's some kind of release, and then there's the Icaros. So then, is that the next step? There's the singing.
So in traditional Shipibo ceremony, and what we do here is it's a super small group. So it's unique that we have 6 or less participants. Some places in Costa Rica, Mexico, or South America could have dozens of participants, but that's not how it was traditionally done. It's traditionally small groups. You have a practitioner, which some people call a shaman, but we do not call them shamans. They don't call themselves shamans. And so once the medicine is ingested, and this is why this is where it's similar to mushrooms, it can be very psychedelic. There can be tons of visions. You can feel very light. You could feel heavy. You can feel a lot of things, but you get called up to the practitioner, and you're not dosed at a level where you're non-functional. People can feel it deeply and be able to walk, talk, go to the bathroom. and you sit in front of the practitioner who will have a spontaneous co-creation of an ikro, plus whatever trauma he or she senses, plus there's pre-talk. So he's singing, you're there, there's the other participants, there's the medicine, and you can just feel things lift, move out. And the practitioner has dieted many plants aside from ayahuasca. And so he or she will then sing with those plants energy back in lighter energy, more powerful energy. So it's like a purge unto itself. And then there's a co-creation of things that come in.
Yeah, so it's a co-creation between the psychotropic work of the plant medicine, that substance, with the I don't know, you said they don't refer to themselves as shamans, but the Shipibo practitioner. Yeah. Okay. And they have a relationship, I think, psychically to that plant. So when they're singing their song, it's not just coming from them, it's coming from the plant is kind of telling them. I mean, I've read a bit of this book that you recommended. I'll put all these references in the show notes because they're fantastic. But Beth recommended a number of resources that they give their participants. And one of them is this beautiful book called Fellowship of the River by Dr. Joseph Tafur, I believe. He's a medical doctor as well as a practitioner.
Yes. So what's super interesting about Dr. Tafur is he helped start the only Shipibo center in Peru, the only one that's run by Shipibo, and it's run by a maestro who's named Ricardo, and he is where all our practitioners go for study. So it's called Niwe Rao, and Ricardo's mission is to train people from all over the world to learn the Shipibo methodology and have them go back to their countries to practice. So Dr. Tafur was a founder of, he doesn't own it, but he was instrumental in starting it.
Yeah. And I'd love to come back to this too, because as you mentioned in the beginning, that you think psilocybin has lost its ability to move energy because the tradition hasn't been carried on from this indigenous foundations, perhaps, whereas ayahuasca has. So that's something really, I don't know, I feel like that needs to be unpacked, that we have this knowledge, not just of the medicine, but also of how it's traditionally used. But anyway, Dr. Tafur says in his book that he explains these ikoros, these singing that we're discussing that happens in the ceremony. He says that they carry like almost geometric vibrational patterns. Yeah. And that they're actually retuning this disorganized energy. And I mean, this is fascinating to me on so many different levels. I mean, as someone who works with trauma and sees a lot intuitively, I can see trauma in the body as discordant energy. And often, and I'd never, until I came across these resources that you sent me, thank you, I'd never really thought about it, but I do often see almost geometric discordant patterns, like sheets of glass that are arranged in a really chaotic manner. And then at the end of a body work, there'll be a coherence, which is more like, snowflakes or crystals or beautiful. So that's really fascinating. How do you understand the connection between the medicine and the songs, or what's your experience of it?
The song, the ikro is the medicine too. And I love that you have your whole field is somatic, because, and especially how you started the conversation saying ayahuasca goes to our core, to our bodies. It very, very much, you can just feel it come through your entire body. Yeah. And what an ikro feels like, and not only have I sat dozens of times, I've been outside of the room or supported people. It actually is sound that feels palpable. It physically feels like it's coming into our bodies, just as if it was a profound massage or something. And then you can feel it lift things So at one point I wanted, you can ask what a song can go to. It can be sexual abuse. It can be fears. It can be any, very particular. But I wanted a song about some of the darkness that I talk to people about a lot. And because I'm pretty empathic, some of it I think I store, as I'm sure you do, other people do. And I was sitting there thinking, I wonder where I store this. Like, is it my stomach? Is it in my throat? Is it in my brain? And I could feel the back of my neck, just like darkness and pain. And then I can feel it just open and lift. And it was so incredible. And then I had this flash of, oftentimes in ayahuasca, people feel they're talking to source or God or ayahuasca itself. But I heard this message: this is what it feels like to have no fear. It was such a lightness of being, such a possibility. And that's what happens. Like, we carry around our pain, a collective pain, our parents' pain, so much pain. And then what would it be like if it was gone?
And how long did that last? I'm curious.
The feeling, so ayahuasca lasts for weeks. It has the highest rate of neuroplasticity of any plant medicine known. Psilocybin has about 2 weeks and of neuroplasticity, which we can talk about, which is how we can restructure. Like, when we're first born, we have super high neuroplasticity. We get to understand things like how to walk, how to talk, different languages, and then slowly we lose that. Except if you sip plant medicine, neuroplasticity in our brains just spikes, and we have new connections, a new opportunity. So the whole thing is that the ceremony will open up possibilities. And the integration that we do is how to solidify it, cement it, make sure that the pathways that we've opened up keep this new way instead of reverting back to the systems we've had before.
I want to ask you about the integration, but I thought it might be fun to point out that I don't know if you're aware, but this back part of your head, which is your occipital ridge, which is if you put your hands here and you put your thumbs under that ridgy bone there, this is the occipital ridge. And in the traditional Chinese meridian system, it's called the gates of consciousness. And it's known that when you can release that or open it, you can receive more consciousness. It's one of my favorite points to hold. So I thought that'd be interesting for the listeners.
But it's interesting for me because I know that. I was like, wow, this is odd. Why? Expecting.
And I don't know. I mean, of course, we think of the brainstem as often where we hold that safety related trauma of like, I'm literally not safe. I'm in fight or flight. I don't know how that's connected to the traditional Chinese tradition, but I know that the gates of consciousness is definitely a thing. And I'm often felt drawn to help traction a bit, just to open the energy body to receive. So very, very, very interesting that's I love how all the traditions come together because, I mean, they're all connected.
We say the same thing about the different religions, that to us, every religion is a finger that's pointing to the truth. And it's not that we look at the finger, we look at where it's pointing. And I think we get hung up about saying Judaism or Catholicism or Islam is a particular path. And it is for some people, but it's a path to something else. So
absolutely. And plant medicine is a pathless path because it's not part of an official kind of tradition. I mean, it has its own indigenous tradition, but what I mean is it's available no matter your spiritual or religious background, because it's kind of it just is what it is. It's so experiential.
Yes.
You don't have to believe in any kind of dogma. You don't have to believe in any kind of mental construct. It's not
Mhm.
it's not in the cognitive space. It's of the body. So
Yes.
yeah. So tell me about this integration, because this is really, really key, because there can be, I mean, people have consciousness shifting experiences in every context. In a religious context, one day crossing the road, grief is a portal, love is a portal, sex is a portal. There's so many different
Right.
experiences, but it seems to me that one of the best gifts of a plant medicine journey is that you can, if you're doing it in a context of integration, you can learn how to weave that into your lived experience, which you don't necessarily get in any other context. Like, integration's a really big thing in the plant medicine community. I haven't heard of an organization take it as seriously as you do. So maybe talk us through what you do,
Yeah.
because it's a small group that you work with to begin with, so 6 or less people.
Sure. So one of the things that we think about is most of it, if not all of our trauma, comes from being in a relationship with a family or a person. And I'm using the term relationship as one, or a group
Yeah.
of people together. So we're hurt in small groups or individually, and we heal in small groups or
Yeah.
individually. It's not like if we could open up a book and read it, then we would all be healed. It just doesn't work, except the repatterning of behavior.
Yeah.
So so it's super important that if in our group of 6 people, we never talk about certain things. We never talk about politics, and that's a huge one, especially here in the United States. But it's because our connections are so much deeper and more profound than anything that's superficial. So our oldest participant is 85 years old. Our youngest is 22, and put those two individuals together, and they're hyper connected because they're seeing each other as the core of who they are. It's not the labels that we carry around about female, male, age, or whatnot. So what happens in a ceremonial weekend when people sit 2 or 3 ceremonies together over 3 or 4 days is there's a deep bond that clicks, of deep caring for the other person. It becomes, when people sit together, you can tell what's going on with other people. You can feel their emotions, and they can feel yours. And the goodwill is astounding. So when people are completed with the weekend, and we go back to the systems and the organizations that we have created, we personally probably have changed dramatically, but our systems have not. Our family structures are exactly how we left them, more or less. Our work, our hobbies, our friendships. And it's not like we go and destroy them, nothing like that. But we have a small band of people that we have a higher level of connection and goodwill with, and we can navigate. Like, I'm coming out of this with an open heart, a lot of authenticity, a renewed commitment to certain ways of being, and that gets reflected right back for 6 weeks minimum. And what that means is that we can see ourselves within the small group, and that gets reinforced with the neuroplasticity. It's super important, because if you come out of a ceremonial weekend and you want to tell a person, gosh, I just saw it to the core of my being, I have a level of self-appreciation and love and care that I've never felt since I was a child, they might say, well, did you see what happened, what Trump said yesterday? And it's so jarring, and it's so, it's almost hurts, because we've gotten to a place of really wanting to be seen like a small child. And so providing that helps solidify it. I hope that it helps. I mean, we bring lots of things in, like internal family systems, which is parts work, which means that we look at ourselves and not with criticism, but with compassion and
Yeah.
curiosity.
Yeah.
And we pull in a lot of Jungian theory about bringing the shadows up and
Yeah.
really seeing that. But we're seen within our collective as whole and complete, not broken, not
Yeah.
our limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
but who we are in our core.
Yeah.
And it's essential. So,
So
but
I realize as you're saying that we haven't really named that yet. So it might be actually helpful for people listening who haven't had this experience to actually name just that profundity of what one experiences in this state, what one is able to, the kinds of experiences people have, because because we haven't named it. And I understand, but I'm sure, it would be helpful, I think, to, maybe just name a few things. Like there is obviously a sense of, and we've discussed already, like the purging or the making contact with that trauma, making contact with it, having something leave, having the song facilitate something leaving, something deep that's been sitting in the soma. But that's just part of it. That's just part of it. There's the purging, the healing, and then there's the kind of meeting the infinite within yourself, that unitive experience. So what kind of things do people have happen?
So there's so much to say about it. There's a term, ineffable, which means it's hard to use words because it's an unverbal experience. But I will absolutely try my best. So what is fascinating about trauma, which I'm sure many people know, is the definition of trauma is it's not what happened to us, but it's our inability to feel the emotions and process them, and they get stored into us. So what happens oftentimes is that people come with pretty acute trauma, which means they're human. And sometimes people are really afraid that they're going to re-experience the most traumatic thing that ever happened to them. And we just never see that happen. What occurs is we feel the emotions. We don't, like if we were abused as a child, it's not like we relive the abuse, but we can be both our adult self, be with the child who was hurt, and we can comfort the child. So we can simultaneously be an adult with agency, and we can be the vulnerable child, or both of ourselves. And in a ceremony, it's like we can allow those emotions to be felt and released, which is why sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's scary. It passes, though. That process passes. And with that, what oftentimes happens is we go back to our original state when we were pre-trauma, pre-limiting beliefs. We touch the divine within us, which is not limited. It's not, I'm unlovable, or I don't belong, or any of those things. So we touch the divinity, the divine that's within us. And for most people, there's a pretty strong spiritual experience. It is, the DMT is called the spirit molecule for a reason.
Which is the DMT is the molecule that causes this.
So a ceremony generally lasts 4 to 5 hours. It generally starts quiet. Our ceremonies are dark, no head masks, no soundtracks. It's humans singing the whole time. And it's much more gentle than I think people expect, but it's incredibly profound. So oftentimes people are there, or they drink the medicine, they're not going to feel anything for about a half hour to 45 minutes. Then feelings can come in. You can start to shake. You can start to see all sorts of visions. It can feel like, wow, this is really strong. And then for some people, it's seeing past people, like, so for ayahuasca is considered grandmother. And many people see their grandmothers and they talk to them.
Really?
There's people who, Oh, it's super common.
Really? So
Especially
many people see grandmothers that it has a really maternal kind of flavor to it, matrilineal.
it's all female. We have a lot of men who sit. Our practitioners tend to be more male than female, but it's in support of the feminine. It's very strong protection. She comes in, she's like a very stern grandmother. She wants you to heal. She wants you to, but it's like you're going with her. You're going to go with her. And it's different than therapy. Therapy is driven by the participant. Plant medicine is a co creation. So things, our brains get larger, our reality becomes much, much greater. Normally, our reality is a tiny sliver of what we can see is of reality, but all of a sudden we can smell sounds, we can feel what other people are feeling, we can talk to ourselves when we're young, we can talk to ourselves when we're older. It's, I would say, what generally happens through all of this, it's a journey. It is a deep, profound, personalized journey. Like, people come back with such insights and self-acceptance. So it could be, I accept all of these things that have happened to me and I have done to others, but the criticism, the judgment goes way down. And so that's why a lot of people say it's, you make so much progress in such a short period of time.
It's I think it's in some of the material I read, this idea that what it essentially is doing, it's returning you to the wholeness that you are. That's something I say often. Is kind of my goal of therapeutic work, and I'm not alone in this, but this idea that we come from wholeness and then stuff happens and we take on board, trauma and identity expectations, and then through the process of whatever is our unique process, and then for some it's plant medicine, we start to release that held trauma. We start to disidentify from it. We start to remember that we've always been okay. So it seems like this dual process of returning to the wholeness through this, initial process of feeling through the pain. I always say that you have to feel your way through it. You can't go around it. You can't just look at it, disconnected from it. That release inevitably is about feeling through it. And we know this from so many healing modalities, even like past life regression. That's the whole way it was discovered to be helpful, is people have a memory or an experience and they feel the emotional impact of it. And it's in the feeling that there's the releasing. And then with body work, it's in the feeling that there's the releasing. And it sounds like the same thing with plant medicine. It's in the feeling that there's a releasing and then a return to wholeness. So now I'm really curious how psilocybin's different.
Okay, I would like to reinforce what you just said. It is so fundamental. No baby is born thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm broken. We take on these limiting beliefs as protectors. So to distance ourselves from pain or what we expect to be reheard by and its armor. So nothing we do puts people into a different persona or state. It's all within each of us. So I love what you said. It was really, really perfect. Psilocybin, which we do upon occasion here, and I have sat and have had beautiful experiences with, is different for me. I'll talk about my personal experience. It's incredibly heart-opening. The first time I sat psilocybin, I was in my 50s. It was the first time I ever had any psychedelic experience.
That'll be me. My 50s. Okay, I'm ready now.
We have tons of people who come to us because we provide such safety with this. But it allowed, and I would say at that point, I was like, I had a mindset of really trying to work through my trauma by having coping mechanisms. Like I learned how to do breath work. I learned how to meditate. I learned all these things. And then I sat psilocybin. I'm like, wait a minute. The world is not nearly as hostile as I was led to believe. And so it opened my reality up to think, to believe that where we come from and where we're going to is so much larger than what we are experiencing right now. So it was fundamentally a beautiful life altering experience. But I would say no trauma was, for me, was like moved.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, as you said earlier, it doesn't move that energy.
Right, right. And so, as beautiful as psilocybin is, and it can be profoundly healing for people in different ways. And I'm not a naysayer of it, but I've worked with people who said with psilocybin, and worked with a lot of people who said ayahuasca. And initially it was completely neutral. I'm like, whatever works for people. Ayahuasca groups shifted so much stronger and dramatically and profoundly that it was remarkable to me. We have people who do both. So it's like different angles. And for some people, they prefer to start or do psilocybin because they perceive it's easier.
Okay.
It could be. But we have other people who sat ayahuasca and they say, tell people to start with ayahuasca if you want to really start shifting.
Yeah.
The thing with ayahuasca is it generally profoundly shifts perspectives.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess psilocybin does too, just it doesn't get underneath the hood of the vehicle, as it were.
So, yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. I forgot to say psilocybin is extraordinarily good to help people get out of depression, to help with anxiety, so end of life fears. It's lovely. It's beautiful. It helps so many people. Yet we work with people all the time who are like, I'm tired of this old framework. I want a completely different mindset. And
yeah. I mean, when I feel into it, when I feel into the essence of it, and I feel this sense that psilocybin is kind of expanding your view and your perspective and kind of opening you up this way, and so that you're going like, wow, this is all possible. And I think there are a lot of studies that show that's kind of how it's rewiring your brain. It can, as you say, shift you out of depression or anxiety. It's expanding possibility. Ayahuasca, I keep having this image of going down into the earth, down into the body. Ayahuasca is going in and it's like, let's clear your physical vehicle so that you can live as that, so that you can walk as that.
That's perfectly said. I'm so glad we're recording this because it was like that. It is very somatic. It's very physical.
Very physical. Yeah.
It's for people, for women who have had children, there are similarities to giving birth. It's not like you're giving birth, but it's definitely going through something that's larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
It's taking, you are experiencing something incredible. Yes, you're part of it. It's a co-creation. You have people that are helping, but you are going through an entire process. And the part of letting go, that which has been entangled in us so long, if not just our lifetimes, but many lifetimes, is no small feat. And when it's like, and I know that you know this, but the weight that we're carrying is incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we're carrying our lineage.
Yes.
And if you believe in past lives, which I do, I don't know that I understand it, but I believe it. You're carrying that as well. I mean, And not only that, but something I talk about in earlier episodes of my first season of my podcast is we also take on board the collective in certain ways because we're identified with, well, first our family and then our culture and then our country and then, et cetera, on top of the lineage. So, we take that energy, we can be, I talk about people kind of walking around with a backpack filled with stones, and each stone represents a burden we carry. And the mistake we make is thinking that it's all ours. It's like it can be a collective belief about having to work really long hours and kind of sell your soul in order to get by. That's a stone. Trauma's a stone, but could be your grandmother's trauma. That's a stone that you're carrying. Or anyway, so I love this idea that it's this such an embodied experience, and that it can clear so much from such a long time ago. And I want to make sure I ask about, I've written down my notepad. I'm always taking notes. I have clients with everything who should and shouldn't be interested. So I will ask that at the end. But I am, and I don't know that you know the answer to this, Beth, but I am really fascinated with this thing about like psilocybin. You said lost its ability to move energy. I'm just like the fact that we have access to this Shipipo culture and people, and that there's a tradition. Like, where did mushrooms come from? Like, isn't that is what? So Dr. Terence McKenna refers to psilocybin. I think it's psilocybin with his stoned ape hypothesis. This idea that humans evolved, like our brains evolved because as humans, we were always taking these plant medicines. And I think he was specifically referring to psilocybin as a catalyst, right? But why?
Yeah, actually, there's the stoned ape. There's a lot of literature about this, that psychoactive substances have been taken since the beginning of time. That is absolutely true. And psilocybin, I believe there probably was a lot of knowledge around it, how perhaps there were songs, perhaps there were rituals, perhaps there was ways to work with it. Tradition now, when people say psilocybin, at least in, different countries, oftentimes it's a soundtrack and people put IMAS on. And it's just different. So what we love, it was so profound about the Shipipo style of using ayahuasca, is that it's a known practice. It's not to say that different psychoactive plants and medicines aren't profound in their own way. We have been gifted this knowledge. They have held on to it, and I would say, thank God they have. And so. I think that there's something, and it's really hard to explain because, and I've sat with psilocybin, people are singing beautiful Beatles songs. That's gorgeous. Yet, then I said ayahuasca, and someone's singing an IKONA, which has frequency, and it's chanting, and it's somatic, and you can feel energy moving. I'm like, well, somebody figured that out and is training people on how to do that. And so we point to that. Why? Because it works. It works. And we're incredibly indebted to these indigenous populations who have kept it, have been able to keep it.
So we don't have that for other things.
I would say that even the Greek tradition is that people would go and have a psychedelic experience. We don't know what exactly they would go and do, but they had a saying that you need to die before you die so you can live. And psychedelics, plant medicines, they open up our reality so that we can see more, that we can connect more. So I very much believe it's been part of humanity.
It has. Sure. It's been part of humanity, and you're right. I'm aware that there's a lot of, information out there. There's a lot of research on how it's been used in different traditions, but it is quite interesting that we don't really have that solid body of work of how to use the substance in a ceremony like you have with the Shipipo. That seems to be a really
It is.
unique thing. And this thing about the evolution. So I'm really interested in this because, this is one of my, in series 1, I'm kind of proposing a paradigm, which is kind of a crazy thing to do, but someone's got to do it. And one of my, it's got to be a menopausal woman, right? Like, so one of my interests, or one of my kind of what I speculate is that humans, well, we know humans are evolving because everything evolves, but specifically that the human biology is moving from a survival based biology to a transmission based biology. That as we come through this, there's this process of, the growing up, waking up. There's a healing of wounds. There's an awakening experience. There's a consciousness experience. There's more of an identification with like your wholeness, your soul, however you want to term it. And then as we walk as that in the world, there's a transmission we hold that affects other people and affects communities and affects the planet. So I have this kind of narrative arc in my brain. So I'm getting to my point, but in my, so I think it's in episode 9, I talk about, so Dr. Gary Nolan at Stanford has done research on the brain and our intuitive abilities. And the way that he came about it is he was approached by the government. And anyway, he analyzed all these MRIs from US personnel who had been exposed to what they described as UAP, so unidentified, anomalous, basically extraterrestrial presences or whatever. And he analyzed all these MRIs, and he found that experiencers had this thickening of neurons in this part of the brain called the caudate, etc. And what's interesting is that it seemed from his research that the experience itself caused this part of the brain to have more activity. And this part of the brain is where we experience intuition, like these sudden insights, right? So part of his theory is that external things affect the brain. And then there are loads of people who are then born with this already thickened neural lining. And also Dr. Lisa Miller, one of my favorite books is Awakened Brain by Dr. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's a psychologist. She studies spiritual experiences. And she's also found that people who have spiritual experiences have different cortical thickness. So I'm not claiming to be a neuroscientist, but there are definitely things that happen in the brain. And there seems to be this symbiotic relationship. Like as we have these experiences, they change the brain. And of course, for me, this is like, this is the stoned ape. This is this idea that it is evolving us. So bringing this back to what you do, after a plant medicine experience, do people have more access to their consciousness? Do they have more psychic experiences? How does their perception change? Not just the healing, but their perception.
So yeah, it's quite remarkable. It's why I'm drawn to work with FieldGuide9 in ayahuasca, because it's actually astounding. So it can be oftentimes DMT, which is the active ingredient in ayahuasca, is surges at birth, death, and extreme experiences, like near-death experiences.
Near-death, yeah.
Right. So the DMT surging plus the neuroplasticity, and also if we did an imaging of the brain during a ceremony, there's all sorts of connections that are linking up. So again, this is my belief, is that we have the ability to really sense other people without verbal language.
Yes, yes.
And we know that this is absolutely true because there's been lots of studies of newborn babies and their mothers with no verbal cues. The mothers can tell what the baby wants.
Yeah.
So we're born with this.
Yes.
And we can think of all the reasons why it deadens down. There's been a lot. So getting back to post ayahuasca, I think as trauma's lifted and some of the armor that we've put on to try to protect ourselves gets lifted, we get to see that, wow, I could super understand what's going on. We a couple of ceremonies before we had a neurodivergent gentleman here who's a data scientist, and he's like, I can tell what everybody's feeling.
Ooh, yeah.
And he had a stronger ability to do that than non-neurodivergent people. So it was utterly fascinating. So his brain's going to be different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the medicine sparked it even more.
Yeah.
And I would say there are many times when I'm talking with people, and I can tell you exactly where their trauma comes from. And they're like, how do you know? Like, I don't know how I know.
Yeah. 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 Something's opened. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so this is that sensitivity that I was talking to you about. Like, so what happens with ayahuasca is it cures all sorts of things, but mostly it also cures atheism. So we start believing that there's so much more. But if you can walk in a room and really sense people at 10x what you could do before, the room starts to scream at you. So many people won't tolerate being in a room with a lot of people that are drunk or super loud, or arguments become even tougher. So that's some of the things we work with people with, because we think it's a great thing. If we can sense people, if we can tell what's happening with ourselves and others, then it's an incredible power to have.
Yeah.
That's good. And the thing I would say, which I work with a lot with people, is when they first come here, I ask people to simply, and maybe you do this, to close their eyes and put their hand on their chest and take a few deep breaths and simply tell me what emotion they feel.
Yeah.
Most people can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, I feel perplexed. I'm like, sad, hurt, angry, love, joy. Those are the basic.
Yeah. No, of course. I see that. Where do you feel that feeling? In my brain?
Yeah. So that's the next question. Like, finally, people can sense their emotion. I'm like, where do you feel it? How does it feel in your body?
In your body.
To talk to a 50-year-old with that is incredibly difficult the first few times. Then people get it. If I had a bunch of 5-year-olds and I asked them, they would fall on the floor crying or jump up and down. So happy. This is a learned suppression. So the first step is where we become incredibly more sensitized to ourselves, which I think is the most important thing. And then from there, it's fairly traumatic. One of the other things that happens after people sit with ayahuasca is they get super clear about what they want in life. So they stop certain behaviors. A lot of people stop drinking alcohol. It's just, it doesn't serve them. They stop social media because they can sense what it feels like.
It's that move from that. It's the seat of your identity completely shifts. Like you reorient around a new identity, which is more soul-based and wholeness-based than based on wounding and conditioning and society. So it makes sense. It's a process that happens, in many different contexts. But what makes the plant medicine feel so different is just how quickly that can happen. Because things can take longer in therapy. Things can take longer, just even if you're part of a spiritual tradition and you're doing your daily meditation and your daily practices. It just seems to be really, really fast. And
I'm going to say something super quick about talk therapy. I'm a fan of getting to a stable point to become a very healthy human. What plant medicine does is it shows us we're much more than this human.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The challenge with talk therapy, which I'm sure you're all over this, is most, if not all, of our trauma gets stored non-verbally.
Yeah.
We have it in our bodies. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have it in our language. So
Yeah.
talking about trauma does not necessarily release it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm a somatic therapist. And of course, we talk, I mean, there's something to be said for understanding yourself, understanding your own
Yeah.
patterns. But people often come to me having done strict talk therapy for many years. And they're like, I understand myself. They can lay it all out. Session one, here's who I am. Here are my patterns. Here are my attachment wounds. This is why, but I'm still suffering. I'm still having these symptoms. So, then as you say, you have to go into the body and really feel it. And there are lots of different ways to do that. But again, it seems to be a very fast process, which can be, I guess, shocking. So that really naturally leads me into this question of like, who should do it and who shouldn't? Because I imagine there's some people like going, I want to do it. And I wonder if you have an opinion. I mean, I guess if it's done safely with a lot of prep, it's okay for everyone. But do you have any advice to give people on that?
I talk to a lot of people, not just who come to FieldGuide9, but they want to know how to decide where to go, which I'll talk to people all the time, every day. And we're not for profit. So our aim is that people get the best care possible. So first and foremost, it's contraindicated generally people with schizophrenia or bipolar. Why? Because it can make our aperture in our brains expansive, and a schizophrenic is already expansive. So generally, that's not a good mixture. If a person is on a psychotropic like an SSRI, antidepressant, something like that, it used to be thought that it would be dangerous. It's not really dangerous. It just will mute the whole experience. So we also work only with people that are not actively on any medication like that.
Okay.
Then it gets to the next thing. Without integration, without support, without we call it a container, we have this language, but I cringe. We've worked with people who've gone to places where there's 80 participants and it's pandemonium. And
I can't even imagine.
Things opened up, and the next to a person who's like having, I don't know, like convulsing. And that scares me because you can pick up all of that it was never meant to be that way. So I think that it's phenomenal for many people for different reasons. The medicine gives you not what you want, but generally what you need, which is a very different mindset. There's another category of people that we turn away. We are not interested in people who just want a psychedelic experience. We will just say, plenty of places you could go for that. So we knock that out pretty quickly. And the other thing is it will bring us front and center to those things we're curing. And people need to know that the process of working through trauma, which I'm sure many people you work with, you're going to feel things. It's the opposite of being numb. It's being super alive and vibrant. And we supported people tend to absolutely love this. But we also never ever work with people who say, I'm here because my wife told me I have to come.
Absolutely. Oh, it's the same thing with therapy. It's always like, ooh, like, do you want to be here?
Right. It would be like, couples therapy where one wants it,
one is sitting like this, and
So otherwise, I would say it's fascinating to see the divergent people who come to us. Very, very different reasons. And they find such healing. It's very amazing. I would also say it's not, I think it's so silly because here we are close to Silicon Valley and we get a lot of tech people. It's not going to do anything to increase your ego. and your ability and desire to make a ton more money and
Yeah.
have power. So if you're looking for something that's just going to accelerate your capitalism, it tends to do not that.
Yeah. That's good. We don't need any more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing. I think that's so important. And it's one of the reasons I was drawn to your work, actually, because I could feel that it's a very ethical, endeavor, and that people are really cared for. And there is, as you say, there's just so many shenanigans out there. I mean, I can't even imagine going to a retreat with 80 people convulsing and plant medicine. I mean, who could possibly, navigate that? So, yeah, I think, and that's an important thing for people to really sit with everything you've said. And I encourage people to listen to this interview again, if you're considering it, to really understand, what it's all about. I think you've given a beautiful explanation of, what actually happens. And so I have to ask you my question. I'm just really curious with all my guests, which is, and I mean, you may have an answer, you may not, and that's okay. But I'm really interested in this, and what people experience or understand about the collective, because I feel like there is some collective evolution happening. There is a change. More and more people are open to these non-ordinary ways of healing, evolving, experiencing unitive consciousness. And so I'm curious, both from like a personal point of view, but also from what you've seen in people who have participated, do they ever feel like they tap into anything in the collective, so beyond their personal experience, like a sense of where humans are going, where Earth is going?
Yeah, always. It's a hallmark.
Yay!
Is the sense that we are not our individual selves. We're part of something much larger, much more expansive. We tend to see or have a mindset that things are working for us, not against us. And I personally will say that for me, the collective, it just gets stronger and stronger. And especially ayahuasca being a grandmother, and I think it's incredibly interesting that women are the only ones that live way past procreation, and what happens in that period, how strong are postmenopausal women connected to a collective well-being. And so I find it, I could talk about that for a very, very long time,
Yes.
that grandmothers have been venerated with the Shipipo since the beginning of time. There's a reason.
Yeah. And I'm going to have you back just to talk about that, because that is something I'm very interested in. Very interested. Having gone through menopause, I mean, it's been 3 years almost, and then done my own research as well. I agree. It's quite fascinating, I think the whole topic.
So if we no longer have the hormones and the ability to procreate, I think our connection to what is the collective is exponentially stronger.
Yes.
And so, yes, and I will put this other snippet in it. I have worked in corporations in technology, part of my career, or a big part of my career. I think it's not a coincidence that AI is surging at the same time as ayahuasca. So there's a collective response. I think that's happening. That's I see a lot of, like, what is this human experiment? This one that's being spurred on by plants that also have DNA just like us.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, well, must have you back to discuss that, because that is, quite interesting. But wow, thank you so much. I think even what I might do is just do a little research on the just on the chemistry of what happens. And I haven't even asked you about like the default mode network and how that gets switched off and the brain and all that. But I just think the conversation itself, it's so valuable that I'll definitely put some resources in the show notes for people, but I might also do a little intro at the beginning with just a few little facts, not to overwhelm anyone. But yeah, I'll have you hang back for a minute after we say goodbye, but thank you so much for the conversation. It's been fabulous. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a topic. There's so much to talk about in this space.
So much.
I deeply appreciate your curiosity and also how you frame some of the experience, because even though you haven't sat yet, you have a deep understanding. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll speak again soon.